Hey guys, welcome back. This is Drew with fantasygolfbag.com. Today we'll be previewing the ApproachIQ, giving you a quick rundown of everything you can find in the newest tool at Fantasy Golf Bag. So ApproachIQ basically is allowing you to really hone in on exactly what approach shots our players are going to face this week, or the players you're most interested in researching for the current week. So we have a couple, default filters that you see across the site: DraftKings, FanDuel, and odds. We do it at the event level. There is a sample size of shots, so you can, be confident in the number of shots that are included. We did last 4 events. This will reload, and you'll see, there's this. Honestly, some of these shots will surprise you at how often these players have, even in a couple rounds. But you can go back to last 12 events. This will reload, and you'll see the change in the number of shots. So honestly, I would be pretty comfortable getting close to, 40 or 50 shots, but I've heard many people say, 100 shots or more is probably where it is. I do think it matters on how far back it goes. So like last 12 events is pretty recent. But like a good sweet spot to me is probably, last 8 to last 12. You can see here, there's plenty of shots, even on the longer shots, which are less frequent. Rory has 56 from 200 to 225 in the last 8 events. Okay, so moving on, we can do it in two views, or I should say 3 views. We have the rank, which is just pretty standard. It's just ranking the stat for each player. Right now, we'll get into these in just a second. We're looking at all shots. We're looking at, I'll even take these out to focus in on 150 to 175 and 175 to 200. We're looking at all shots. These are our options we'll get to in just a second. And these are our stat options: proximity, green regulation. We'll talk about these in a second as well. But the rank is just taking the underlying value and ranking it to players. Percentile is taking that rank, but adding putting it into a percentile. So as you know, there could be a gap of, 0.5 between 10th and 12th place, and there could be a gap of 0.5 between 50th and 100th place, and it really shrinks it down. Percentile gives you a better indication of how much better one player is over the next, instead of just he's first, he's second, he's third. But we give you both options, and then the average is the actual underlying stat, basically the average for that sample size. All right, we'll just jump back to rank. These are our distance buckets. So the approach stuff is pretty easy. I think everyone understands, what we're facing every single week with approach: 50 to 125, 125 to 150, all the way up to 225 to 250. So the idea here is, if you really want to, we have a golf course that's really long, we can focus in on approach shots. And I'll give you an example here in a second, but maybe there's a shorter course where there's more wedges. We want to see what that player's been doing with the shorter irons. So instead of just taking a blanket stroke gained approach number, now we can start to look at, or even green regulation number, we can hone in specifically on the distances that our players will most likely face that week. So we'll stick with 150 to 175 and 175 to 200. The second section is the types of shots that they've hit. So this is all shots. This includes fairway, par 3 tee shots, rough, intermediate rough, which is called first cut, and then fairway bunker shots. So honestly, we're looking for ceiling. So to me, I'm always looking at fairways or par 3s if, I really want to focus on par 3s for a certain week. But fairways is a pretty good catch-all for even the par 3s. This is what I'm going to look at. So now our Approach IQ has filtered our players down into 150 to 175 up to 200, and only fairway shots. So now we can see who is the best. And over the last 8 events, it's Rory with 33 shots from the fairway in the 150 to 175 bucket. He is number 1. You can see Sam Burns here is 8th. It's good to know. The par 3s are the same thing. So you can look at par 3s in those distances. You'll probably see less, because there's only 4 per round and they're spread out typically. But you can also see there how players have fared on par 3s in those distances. I'm going to go back to fairway. And then the last section here is our stats. So I'll talk through my favorite one, but we have proximity, which is pretty standard. People can see how close on average they've been from that distance. 22 feet for Rory, 27 feet for Scotty. Green regulation, fantastic stat. I love this. It's green regulation from those specific buckets. Again, a nice indication of who's been hitting the best most consistently, because again, proximity is an average. So a player could hit it to an inch or hit it and then hit it to 200 feet somehow, and it's going to average out to 100 feet. It's a bad example. We'll say hit it to an inch and hit it to 50 feet. It's going to average to 25 feet. Versus a player that hit it to 24 feet and then hit it to 24 feet again. They average 24 feet. It looks pretty close. So that's why I kind of lean away from proximity, especially on the longer distances. Certainly with wedges and shorter irons, I think proximity has tremendous value. But as we go into longer distances, green regulation is a great number, and stroke gain approach is probably even better. So stroke gain approach is nonlinear, where the difference between hitting it 8 feet, or I'm sorry, hitting it like 4 feet to 15 feet is a pretty big jump, but then hitting it 50 feet to 100 feet is much less of a penalty in terms of strokes gained. So this gives me an idea exactly of how often, what kind of number they're gaining in those different distances. If we just saw Rory was number 1 in proximity, it kind of aligns with his strokes gained approach number. Makes sense. Scotty Scheffler, I think, was probably a little bit different. Yeah. So if you look at the rank, he was 28th in proximity, but if you look at strokes gained approach, he's 5th. So I really like strokes gained approach at this shot level. It's really nice. And then lastly, the return to par score. I don't love it. I think maybe with par 3s, it's probably okay, and probably wedges, it's okay. Outside of that, again, you kind of got to scale up from the wedges to the longer irons. So like return to par score, again, is just looking at their average score on any of those holes, par 3 or par 4, from those distances. So like, honestly, Scotty and Rory's doing pretty good. 175 to 200, they've played 51 shots and 35 shots respectively. They're minus 0.1 for Scotty, minus 0.23. So they're playing those those shots under par, which is very good. So hopefully that helps. I would, my advice for using this tool, if it's wedges and shorter irons you're focused on, proximity is fantastic. Strokes gained approach is still fantastic. Return to par is probably fine too. When you're looking at longer shots, so even like 200 to 225, I want to be more concerned with green regulation, strokes gained approach, less so on proximity and less so on return to par score. And then these distances, or these different filters here, it's just for you to fine tune the data if you're really curious about rough for some reason, and first cut, fairway, bunker. But for me, I'm looking for ceiling. I want my guys hitting fairways. That's what I expect. So I'm looking at fairways, and then sometimes I'm looking at the par 3s. But fantastic tool. Love the ApproachIQ. Hopefully you find use for it in your process. If you have any questions, just let us know. Happy to add enhancements. If you think there's something else that would benefit you or others, we're happy to accommodate. So best of luck, guys. Hopefully this helped. We'll chat with you later.